After yet another loss, Erik Spoelstra had a lot to say about Miami's style of play. Is this team too selfish? Are individual goals hurting their chance at winning? We look at Spo's comments, possible solutions, and whether it might be time to consider the unthinkable, tanking this season. All that and more on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. Things not going awesome for your Miami Heat. They are 2-5 after this West Coast trip. They started it with a win over the Trailblazers. Then had a close loss against the Warriors on the second night of a back-to-back that you and I talked about. Maybe more of a moral victory. Certainly a loss that you could feel okay about considering how they played. But then you give the Kings on Saturday their first win of the season. You have to come back from more than 20 points down just to make it a game in the second half. And David, I got to say, this Kings game felt like just how so many of these games early in the Miami Heat season has felt. Just no energy, no urgency. And that just too often has been the case with them early in the year. Erik Spoelstra after the game basically saying as much. No effort on defense, citing the slow starts. He had an eyebrow-raising answer to a question about Tyler Herro's 34-point performance in Sacramento. We're going to touch on that later on. But David, what did you make of Spo's comments about the lack of effort?
I guess he's just trying to find something to light the fire there. I guess they're accurate. I mean, that's pretty much what you can say about it. They're accurate. Yeah. There's so much interwoven into everything that Spo says, so I'm not sure how much you can actually parse from it, but there is some truth to what he's saying about the lack of energy, the lack of intent, and these are things that Spo always looks at. For him, it's never about rotation changes or what players are available or anything like that. He doesn't care if you have 5 corpses out there, as long as they focus on what they're supposed to do and they do their job as well as possible. If they bring their energy, they bring that level of intent that he's looking for. So I think he's trying to stir something up. I think he's trying to find a way of getting this team focused and engaged at this point in the season, which that's always been a hallmark of this team too. This has been a team that's always come out of the gate. They always come out in shape. They always come out more prepared than your average team to start the season. This has been the exact opposite of that. So it's a little surprising as well that they've gotten off to this slow start.
I do wonder how much last year's run is impacting their slow start now. It just felt like it took everything they had, right? They used every amount of gas they had in the tank to get to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, whether you're talking about Jimmy Butler playing 48 minutes in a playoff game and all these things, and the COVID year and the lineups they had to scrap together in December and January. It felt like they really wrung out as much as they could out of last year's roster, and that was what was so fun about last year's team, right? It was that you could, even though they lost in Game 7, you felt like you could walk away from that season feeling like I think they maximized what it was that team was. And I did question whether or not that was going to carry over. When you have to go through that whole thing again, you got to go through an entire 82-game season again to try to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. This whole run-it-back thing, that was my biggest question about it. I remember asking players and coaches about it earlier in the season, or in the preseason. Hey, is this going to be a concern? Is this like energy level? Is that about, in terms of running it back, is that an issue for you guys? Or is it a question mark for you guys? And to a man, every single one of them said, you don't have to worry about that with us. And I took them for their word. But David, I got to tell you, I'm worried about them right now because it kind of just feels like I don't know that they want to go through that slog in that same way. I thought that this was Spo's most direct post-game press conference that he's had all year. He doesn't really use the media to fire up his team very much, but he will. He's done it before, and it felt like he was doing it in Sacramento. I'm with you. I think he's just trying to figure out a way to create some sort of sense of urgency and call them out publicly because I rewatched the game this morning, and so many of these defensive rotations are just missed. It all starts defensively. This is a team that has not done well in transition. It's just hustle stuff. It's basic things that you're not closing out as hard as you ought to. You're not fighting over that screen as hard as you should. a guy like Kevin Herter, who made 7 3-pointers in that game, he's a known 3-point shooter. He's an awesome 3-point shooter. That's not new. And they're going under screens, like basic know your personnel stuff. And I'm just like, I don't really know, going over screens against De'Aaron Fox when obviously you should be going under. And so it's just kind of basic things that are uncharacteristic of this Heat team.
There were a couple of possessions there early on where Tyler Herro, and it feels like and perhaps it's for good reason, but I think it always tends to skew heavily towards one side more than it should. It feels like we're going to bag on Tyler a lot, but there were possessions where he was completely lost. Like he completely had no idea where Herter was, and he was trying to kind of hedge towards the paint a little bit as somebody's driving towards the rim. And in the meantime, Herter's completely free from the wing there to shoot an open three, and that's on Tyler. Like he has to be aware of who he's guarding at times there. But
I noticed that too. But also, I also noticed, by the way, Bam missing rotations. I noticed Jimmy Butler missing rotations. I noticed Kyle Lowry not closing out hard. I noticed Caleb Martin not closing out hard. Gabe Vincent missing rotations. There. It's when Spo did say this. It's a collective, and he said it a couple different times, and I do believe him that. And whoever needs to lead the charge, I guess they'll figure it out. But this defense in general is not good. They're ranked 19th in the league defensive rating. That is bad for this organization. This is a team that was 4th in defensive rating last year. I know you lose PJ Tucker and all that kind of stuff, but I never expected. I thought they would slip back a little bit, but I never expected down to the bottom 10 in the league, basically, which is where they are.
The optimistic view at the start of the season was continuity, versatility. There's enough there on this roster that they're going to figure it out. They're going to tie it together. Of course, Erik Spoelstra always gets the most out of his rosters, et cetera. And then they can find a way to win early on, maintain this throughout the regular season, and then kind of come close to about 50 wins at the end of the season. That's where we were both at. I think we were both kind of optimistic. Perhaps it was just the buzz of media day and talking to players and things of that sort and seeing them trend in the right direction during the preseason where they were kind of showing this versatile offense, this, willingness to shoot from three, et cetera. Now the regular season starts, and it's the exact opposite. And I'm kind of feeling more about the pessimistic view on this team, which is that they lost something in the offseason and they didn't get enough energy back. Like there is I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but they're kind of like hung over at this point.
Yeah.
After the last few seasons.
It's a good word. Hangover is a good word. And I'm with you. I mean, I don't know how could you not be pessimistic about this team? They're 2-5. I know they always lose in Sacramento. The broadcast showed a graphic that they've lost one of their last, they've only won one set of the last 5 or 6 years now in Sacramento. So I don't know how you could take any other view than to be pessimistic. And I think that's why we got the comments that we did get from Erik Spoelstra after the game, because I think he's feeling that level of frustration as well. I mean, look, this team, going back to defensively, which is we know is where they hang their hat, that's the focus for this team. They are giving up the most points in the league off of live rebounds, according to Cleaning the Glass. 30th in the league. What is that stat? I mean, when you think about what a live rebound is, okay? So let's call it the Sacramento Kings, since it's the most recent loss. They get a defensive rebound off of a missed Miami Heat shot, and now they're just scoring in transition. That's it. It's not a turnover. It's not anything like that. It's just, hey, a normal defensive rebound off of a normal missed shot, and now Sacramento's just able to get out and run. The broadcast, the media, everybody keeps focusing on the fast break points and stuff, but not every fast break point is created equal. Some of these fast break points are created out of nothing, just out of a run-of-the-mill defensive rebound where the Heat have been historically so good at hustling, getting back, and setting their defense. They're not doing that. They're not hustling. They're not getting back as quickly as possible. And even when they do get back a little bit more quick, they're just, it's basic communication stuff. They're losing guys in semi-fake transition, not knowing what their assignments are. And that to me is the bewildering thing. Part of the continuity should be just knowing your personnel and knowing how you act on defense, and just feels like this team hasn't really ever played together. Maybe it's the starting lineup having two new players in it. I don't know, but it's the bench, it's the starting group, it's everybody.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's there's nothing wrong with the personnel here, because I was thinking, like, I saw a statistic where it was like a plot chart there where it was like the smallest team in the league, and no surprise to Heat fans, it's Miami. They've got the smallest lineups out there. They have the shortest.
They're the smallest team in the league and the second oldest team in the league.
Right, so not a great combination.
Yeah,
those things in combination with a general lack of effort. That's the problem. And I was thinking, even last year, like, what was the difference? It was PJ Tucker's no taller than Caleb Martin, but You're never going to question
like
his effort.
No, and he plays bigger. I mean, and he's twice as wide as Caleb Martin is too, and he's a great communicator. Every coach you ever talked to that's dealt with PJ Tucker says he's an incredible communicator on defense. All the thing, ignore the box score, what he does for us. And Spo, to your point, Spo used to talk about it too all the time. About the size, Erik Spoelstra after kept saying, we know the answers to the test. We know the answers to the test. Well, what are the answers to that test? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. But first, David, tell the listeners about BetOnline.
BetOnline, still your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis in every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information. It's the fastest and easiest way to check out all of your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, golf, so many more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, back here with Locked On Heat. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Asked about Tyler Herro's 34 points, Erik Spoelstra was uncharacteristically blunt, said when a reporter added, although not in a winning effort in regards to Tyler's 34 points, Spoelstra said that's the most important thing, not offering anything else after that. I want to put a pin in that comment for a minute, though, David, because I want to go back to what we were talking about defensively. And something I noticed, a stat that I got from the Sacramento Kings game, you were just talking about how small this team is. We know that they switch everything, right? Domantas Sabonis, who ended up fouling out in that game on Saturday, was unbelievable. 18 points, made all but one shot. I looked at the matchup data on the NBA stats website. Sabonis was 7 of 7 against undersized players. Everybody from Caleb Martin to Gabe Vincent and everything in between. The Kings scored 29 points total. So he had 16 points in those direct matchups in which he took a shot. And the team in general scored 29 points every offensive possession that Sabonis ended up being matched up against a smaller player. I think it was Bam who was asked after the game by a reporter, hey, do you think you need to still switch everything? Because so often it's easy for a team, even like Sacramento, to come down and just say, hey, look, Bam is on Sabonis. We want to get the ball to Sabonis. We want to get him involved. Okay, let's run a simple two-man action, get Bam switched on to De'Aaron Fox, have De'Aaron Fox throw it into Domantas Sabonis in the post, who's got Gabe Vincent or Kyle Lowry or Tyler Herro or Max Strus on his hip, and then he could just go over and score over him, which is basically what Sacramento did the entire first half and how they got out to a 20-plus point lead. Do you think that the Heat need to maybe rethink the switch everything scheme?
Yes, but I don't know what the other answer is, right? I mean, going to drop doesn't seem realistic either. They don't have the size for that. I don't think they have the personnel. I think they have the defense to match what they have available to themselves on the roster right now. I know we'll see something different if and when Omer Yurtseven makes his return to the court. But at this point, I don't know that there's another answer out there. I mean, it's fun to talk about these things, but what's the solution? Yurtseven's not a great defender. I mean, if they change their defense around to some degree, change their scheme a little bit. And then Spo has always talked about it's not the zone defense. It's not like they go switch or man-to-man or anything like that. It's all about intensity, effort, intention, all these things that we've been talking about. And I'm starting to agree with them. Most of those things kind of seem very vague. I know a lot of people who watch it or listen to this podcast want more defined X's and O's talk and things of that sort. But at some point, you really just have to try harder. And it doesn't matter what scheme you are if you're completely eating shit out in the corner and Kevin Huerter is blasting you for 3 points, completely wide open.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you too. Like, you hear him say, we know the answers to the test. And I'm like, wow, well, if you knew if it was an X's and O's thing, to your point, then you would just do it. You would just, hey, look, we're going to do this defense. We're going to run this offense. We're going to run this play. We're going to get the ball to this person at this time. If it were that simple, it feels like it would already be done. So I think you're right. I think it is effort and defense. And again, I watched the game again this morning before we started recording, and you just see, even Bam, man, just
why would you do that to yourself?
I don't know, because I was trying to prepare, David. This is why I do it, so the people that watch don't have to do it. It is effort, man. Even Bam, not coming up all the way at the level of the screen and blitzing and helping, in a way that you're used to seeing the defensive player of the year candidate do. It's everybody, and it just feels like overall there's this malaise over the team. And I'll go back to my initial question: how much of last year's run really drained this team? It's really tough to know.
All of it. All of it.
Feels like it, doesn't it? And
I was talking to a family member yesterday. They were like, "Oh, what's wrong with the Heat?" I was like, "Their title window closed. That's it. It's over. They went all in on last year.
yeah.
Bring in Kyle Lowry, bring in PJ Tucker, get as close as you possibly can." Like as we mentioned after the Warriors game, they probably would have challenged Golden State in a way Boston couldn't. And without any kind of changes over the offseason, bringing in any fresh blood, you've grown stagnant. And I think that's part of it. It's like Jimmy's older, Kyle's older. There have been people off the record who are questioning his desire and whether or not he wants to still be committed to winning. Like he says it publicly because what's he going to say? We've never heard a player in the history of the NBA say, "Hell yeah, I love losing. Bring it on." So we're not going to hear that from Kyle anytime soon.
No, and I think
at 36,
Yeah.
older, with personal issues off the court, and already having gotten his championship, already doing as much as he possibly can to get to that Hall of Fame level category. What's left for him?
Yeah, I know.
And so
I'm with you. It feels like this championship window has maybe closed. I know we're going to talk about the idea of maybe going the other direction later on, but I do want to get to Tyler Herro's comments. Or Spo's comments about Tyler Herro, because I think it's pretty enlightening. Again, asked about Tyler Herro scoring 34 points, 11 unanswered points in the third quarter to get Miami back into this game. Spo says, not in a winning effort. And that's the most important thing. This is the full quote after that. Right now, this is about the collective group, how we're going to impact this thing together to impact winning. If we try to do it any other way, it's going to lead to an incredible amount of frustration. Anybody that's trying to do it on their own, or anybody that is trying to self-will it, or anybody trying to work any individual goals with this, it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work on either end. This was maybe the most direct and eyebrow-raising thing that Spo said after the game. I got some quick... he also went to say, like, hey, quick shots, we can't do that. We know what our diet on offense has to be. It's not quick looks. And I found that a little surprising because I was like, watching that game, I didn't see a lot of quick shots. I actually kind of felt like the offense got stagnant and they were taking a lot of late. I think the first possession of the game, they had to take a shot with 5 seconds left on the clock. It was like Caleb Martin, like some corner fadeaway thing, just because he had to take something.
there's a few of those.
I think when Spo was talking about the quick shots, it was at about the end of the game, not the first half of the game, even though in the first half he was talking about the slow defense and stuff. The quick shots, I think, were he was citing stuff that was happening in the end of the fourth quarter when Miami could have stole that game, right? It was a 1-point game, 101-100 with like 4 minutes left or something like that. Here's like the last 2 minutes of the game. Tyler Herro taking a corner three from the corner in the middle of Miami's run. That kind of killed it. Max Strus taking an early three, down 7 with 1:10 left. No reason to take that. Max Strus, another three from the top of the key with 40 seconds left, even though Tyler Herro kind of put him in that situation by picking up his dribble and trying to kind of hero his way to get a hero ball kind of shot. Sacramento ended up triple teaming him, and he got the ball to Strus, who kind of had to take a shot. And then Tyler Herro again, another running corner three with 8 seconds left. I think that's, and then immediately after, Spo was asked about that stuff, right? Like the Heat, their run falls short. He's asked about it after the game, and he immediately starts citing the quick shots. And I think he was talking about the ones at the end of the game. Do you think that Tyler Herro is a little... First of all, when he's talking about anybody trying to do it on their own, do you think he's referencing Tyler Herro?
I think that's pretty clear. Like I don't think he's going to throw Jimmy, Kyle, Bam under the bus like that. And given the history of Tyler's one-way game being mostly focused on the offensive end, it kind of fits alongside with what Spo was saying, trying to do it all on your own, trying to save this game, etc.
Yeah.
My problem is this is who Tyler was as a rookie. And how do you manage that? He won games for Miami as a rookie because he was willing to take on those big ones, because he was willing to do things and able to do things on his own. And now they're trying to curb that a little bit. It doesn't quite make sense either. So I'm not sure what the solution is. I don't even know if there is one, to be honest with you.
It kind of feels like this is what to your point, you get this with Tyler Herro. The reason the Heat got back into this game was because of Tyler Herro, because he was so willing to step up and take those shots. I know a lot of people will criticize Tyler Herro's shot selection at times, but sometimes it also feels like somebody's got to do something, and the answer to that something is usually Tyler Herro, or very often it is, when you've got Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and Kyle Lowry, who could also be criticized for maybe being a little bit too unselfish at times. So you want that balance, and I thought that balance would end up being the one that would kind of solve this Heat offense going into the season, because we talked about the issue in the Eastern Conference Finals. It just felt like they didn't really have a guy who can create his own look outside of Jimmy Butler. And we thought that Tyler could be that guy in the starting lineup. I think there's a way for it to work. I just think that this is growing pains. I don't think it's Tyler Herro being unselfish. I don't think that it's an issue over like a long-term concern with Tyler Herro. I just think that this is what you get when you get a sixth man of the year who scored 21 points a game, who basically ran his own offense, to being in the starting lineup like this, and being asked to kind of do the same thing, put up those points, and being that shot creator. When do you balance, all right, I'm the shot creator, I'm the guy who could save this offense and get it out of the mud, to let me work the offense? And I think we see it at times with Tyler, right? He's really developed as a passer. It's not something we've talked about a lot on the show this season. He's gotten much better, I think, as a playmaker this year, even from last year. I just think this is the balance, and it's hard for young players to find it. But
we haven't talked about it. I know we hinted at maybe discussing this. Is it time for you to start panicking? Because I'm not there yet. Where are you in the panic meter? Let's say.
I feel like I'm past panic. I mean, I panic is like, I didn't expect this team to be 2-5. I wouldn't have expected this team to be 2-5. That Sacramento Kings loss is a very bad one. Again, going into that game, it was only the Kings and the Lakers who had yet to win a game. Now the Kings have won a game. I'm beyond panic. I after what we saw the first 2 weeks of the season, I kind of just expect this. I don't think that this team is very good. And look, I know that.
But you just said it's growing pains, though. Like, right? If it's
in Tyler Herro's case, I think the balance of quick shot and that stuff, that's growing pains. But in terms of the panic meter overall, I just don't know that this team is very good. I don't know that Tyler Herro figuring out that balance between selfishness and unselfishness is going to is the difference between this team being 2-5 and 5-2. You know what I mean?
Could be.
Maybe it's the difference between 2-5 and 3-4. But I don't know.
It just feels like you can pinpoint the one different thing for every loss, and now it's Tyler's turn, and he's struggling. Right. He's had a few bad games in a row now, and so it just feels bigger than it is. They're
also only in that game because of Tyler Herro, though. So it's hard to kind of pin the loss on Tyler Herro. But you're right. Like, it feels like every other game, it's you're just trying to fill one hole and another one springs open, and I just think that, and I go back to it. I don't think this team is very good. And that's kind of what bad teams look like, is that it's always just something different. I will say it's defensively. It really does start defensively. This team is so bad defensively compared to what it used to be and expects to be. They have real things that they need to fix. And sometimes, I'll go back to what you said earlier. Sometimes it just comes down to playing harder. It kind of feels like this team just needs to play harder. And again, go back. Does this team have harder in them? Do they have more in them? Smallest team in the league, second oldest team in the league, coming off of Game 7 of a final Eastern Conference Finals run. Do they have harder in them? I don't know. Is tanking an option for the Heat? It might not be as far-fetched as some people think. That's coming up next here on Locked On Heat. After this 2-5 start, a lot of people are wondering if the Heat should tank and get in on the Wembanyama sweepstakes. For those who think that the Heat would never tank, let me just point out 2 years in franchise history to you real quick. 2007 and 2008. The Miami Heat, culture-setting team. We never tank. We will never tank. Every time they ever talk about tanking, they look down on teams who tank. I can't believe they would do something like that. The Miami Heat never tank, except in 2007, 2008, a season in which they started 2-8 that year, not far from where the Heat are now. The Heat ended up winning just 15 games that year. They drafted Michael Beasley. They traded away a bunch of players. They played players you never even heard of. They tanked that year. You could tell me that team was bad. That team was bad. Were they 15 wins bad? No, they were not 15 wins bad. They tried to only win 15 games. They tried to get Derrick Rose. They ended up getting the second pick, got Michael Beasley. 2014, 2015, not nearly as bad. But final game of the year against the Philadelphia 76ers, early process, kind of mid-process 76ers, final game of the year. They played all their bench guys. They played Zoran Dragic like 40 minutes or something like that. In an effort to just improve their lottery odds, they ended up getting the number 10 pick. They drafted Justice Winslow at number 10. You could argue that none of those tanks worked out. Michael Beasley, not a great career. Justice Winslow now playing for Portland. But they did it, and that's the overall point. Is that on the table right now for the Miami Heat, tanking?
Well, I'll dismiss 14-15 because, as we recall, they had also traded for Goran Dragic, and they had also lost Chris Bosh halfway through the season because of blood clots.
It was more of a one-game tank at the end of the year. It was like the last week of the season tank, but
that's fair.
Soft tank.
Is tanking an option? I don't know. It could be the one ticket And I hate tanking. I hate the idea of purposely losing.
Yes, I know.
I think it breeds that losing mentality. We see it with franchises that get stuck losing and losing and losing. And there's always a light at the end of the tunnel until you crap all over the end of the tunnel. You can't see anything anymore. And I think that's basically what's happened with Orlando, Houston, Washington, et cetera. So I don't think that ever really works. A 1-year soft tank to add that boost of energy. If there's no ticket, if there's no easy path to acquiring a superstar via trade, because they couldn't do it for Kevin Durant, and they don't have the assets, and they don't have the right players in this team, but you need something, an infusion of talent, energy, youth, size.
Wembanyama.
This could be the only option.
They need. It sounds like Wembanyama. No, I'm with you. Like I think. Here's the thing: can you tank, but keep Jimmy Butler? Can you tank and keep Bam Adebayo? Can you tank and keep Tyler Herro? Because I don't know. And that's sort of what the Warriors did, right? They were bad, not on purpose. Steph Curry broke his hand, and then they weren't very good the next year. And then they got Jonathan Kuminga with the Minnesota pick, so that wasn't even the. I don't know. I don't know that you. What does tanking look like if you keep Jimmy Butler? Because I do think if you tank, you probably try to trade Kyle Lowry. I think that much is clear. I don't know what team would want Kyle Lowry. Would the Lakers take him? Would you just do like Lowry and Duncan Robinson for Russell Westbrook, buy out Russell Westbrook, and then just get the draft picks? And then all of a sudden you have a couple more maybe 1 or 2 more draft picks from the Lakers, and you don't have Lowry, and then you're playing young guys, and you're just letting Jimmy Butler play 30 minutes a game and 60 games this season, and just sort of soft tank this thing. Make up fake injuries. It's a hamstring every other night for Jimmy Butler, whatever. And let Bam go try to win Defensive Player of the Year and let Tyler Herro try to score 30. I don't know. I just don't really know what that soft tank looks like. Because again, when the Warriors did it, they lost their best player for basically the entire season. Right. I don't unless you have Udonis Haslem go in and break Jimmy Butler's hand in the middle of a practice. I don't really know what that looks like for the Heat.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of it, is that you just kind of have to buy into this as an organization. You have to get your players to buy into it, because we've
which
heard
would be a 180 for this organization.
Yeah. Players don't tank, organizations do. If you make that trade, it could kill whatever positivity might be in the locker room. So I think that's a big thing to consider too. You run the risk of alienating Jimmy Butler, and he's your star under contract for a long time and for a lot of money, and so you don't necessarily want to go that route. But if you're going to sell him on the process of, look, we do this for 1 year, and then we're right back into it within a year or two, and this is the best path for us.
Yeah, it's a tough sell, isn't it? That's a tough sell.
It is and it isn't. If he takes this year off, I remember asking him at the start of the season, right, like how much he loves playing basketball still. He still wants to win. I just don't know that if they're going to continue down this path and not going to do a lot of winning, and he wants to win at the highest level, this might be your best option in that regard, because then you clear that cap space by trading away Lowry and Duncan. Westbrook's contract comes off the books. You get yourself a high draft pick. All of a sudden you have space to add free agents. You have another draft pick to potentially include in a trade for another superstar or whatever, or you can draft a player that you can bring in and immediately make an impact. This is how you accumulate assets, and this might be Miami's best path to that. I'm
not anti making moves that are a little bit more forward-looking, because I'm with you. The Heat need to figure out a way to reopen this window, because this team now, the window's closed. And Oladipo, Yurtseven, I know they haven't played. They're not they're not the difference between 5-2 and 2-5. They're just not.
Right.
And and so I'm with you there. I just don't know if there is a middle ground. I don't know that you could really sell Jimmy Butler on basically take. Maybe you can. Maybe he's cool with it. Maybe he's more tired than he thought. And maybe he's like, you know what? Yeah, let's just coast this year and figure it out. If you get the first pick in the draft, I would be shocked if you didn't take Wembanyama. But also considering that this might be the best prospect since LeBron, and you got even other people in the league saying he might be better as a prospect than LeBron even was, even though I wouldn't go that far. I think there's a little recency bias there. But even that's a conversation says a lot. Imagine what you could trade that pick for.
Yes.
Like Bill Simmons does like the trade value rankings, right, of every player. Like right now, is Wembanyama top 5, I think, based on how people are talking about him. I don't know that there's 5 players that you would trade Wembanyama for. Like, that's insane. Imagine the kind of player you could possibly get for Wembanyama, who would be more of an immediate contributor considering how young Wembanyama is. I don't know. I'm just throwing there out as an option. If you trade Lowry and you start playing these young guys, I don't know if you have to go fully super tank mode and trade Jimmy Butler, right? Like our friend Michael Pina for the Ringer had those bold predictions and said, hey, maybe the Heat would start shopping Jimmy Butler. I don't see them doing that. I don't see this organization doing it that way. I could be wrong. We could debate whether or not it's wrong or right. I just don't see them doing it.
The way it worked in Golden State is you had players that had been drafted by the organization and had longevity and had already won too.
Yeah.
So they could embrace that soft tank or whatever.
Well, there was nothing doing. I mean, Klay Thompson was already hurt. He was coming back from the ACL tear after in the finals, and then Steph Curry broke his hand. So it would be like if Jimmy Butler broke his hand and Bam Adebayo tore his ACL, and both of them were out for the year, and you're just like, all right.
Let's not put that out there, Wes.
But that's what the equivalent would be, right?
No, I know. I get it. But the difference, though, is that those players had the full trust of the organization, right? They'd gotten paid. They'd already won, etc. You don't have that in Miami. Jimmy is basically, he's been here for 3 years now, and his championship window may or may not be closing. So I don't know whether or not he starts leaning into it. I tend to think that he will, because I see him being so confident in his abilities to be able to continue being a top 10 player beyond this season.
Yeah.
So maybe he'd be willing to accept it. I'm not sure.
I don't think that this team is going to actively tank, but this team might just be bad. The big question now is whether or not they're going to make moves. Okay? I don't know how many wins they're going to have. I don't know what playoff spot. I still think this team makes the playoffs. When they make moves between now and the trade deadline, are they moves to sort of immediately fix things, find a new PJ Tucker and kind of that, and find another Band-Aid over the power forward spot, which has been the case for the last 3-4 years? Or are they moves that are a little bit more forward-looking? Do you start trading age for some youth? Do you try to find a long-term answer at different spots and things like that? This team is not good. This roster will not be the roster at the end of the season. I can promise you that. I just wonder what kind of moves they do make when they eventually do make those moves. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reaction, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. That's it. Thanks for joining me, David.
Hey, what choice do we have, right?